Hey, what's happening, guys? Let's give this a few minutes to get everybody fired up here and lined up. Hey, thanks for joining us. Nice to see you there again. Really looking forward to an absolutely awesome seminar here tonight. Real quick, again, my name is Captain Mike, host of Florida Sport Fishing TV. For all you guys that are new, just joining us here. Super excited to be doing another installment here in our weekly live seminar series. These have really been working out well. You know, we're down here in Marathon in the middle Florida Keys. We're filming shows for our new season, which debuts in July. Again, I've got to stress this, a new season of Florida Sport Fishing TV debuts in July on Bally's Sun Sports. This was the Fox Sports Network, bought by different companies, same channel, same network, same programming, but a new name, Bally's. So expect to see that moving forward here. Actually, as of today, Fox is now going to be Bally's. So just keep that in mind. Now, of course, every week what we're doing is talking about a different topic, you know, something that's really happening, that's current, you know, that either we're doing right now or you're doing right now or you should be doing right now. And of course, we also include a local, real-time Florida Keys fishing report. Now, obviously, you know, understand what I'm saying here. I'm giving you an overview to what's happening down here in the Keys. And it's impossible, of course, to, you know, jam it all down your throats in just a few minutes. You know, the Keys is a big, long, wide area. And there's a lot that goes on from Key Largo all the way to Key West and beyond. So again, I'm just sharing some of that info with you to give you just that overview, okay? Well, let's get right into it. You know, we're actually right before we get into it, just a couple more quick public announcements and then we'll get going. Want to just remind everybody to check us out on YouTube and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Florida Sport Fishing. Of course, you can watch the last 10 seasons of Florida Sport Fishing TV there. All of our extreme seminar series that we previously filmed live up at Chaos in Pompano. You can watch those there, and they're real extensive. They're very detailed. They're 60 to 90 minutes. Some of them are even longer, okay? Our Instagram page here, I've got to stress, I need all you guys. I need all your fans, your support. You know, I want to continue to grow this IG page here. And, you know, I'll tell you, I've been thinking about it. A lot of guys buy likes, buy followers. You know how that goes. I mean, that's the real deal. I'm not doing it. I absolutely refuse to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'd rather have lower numbers, but legit people like you guys, you know, that means something to me, rather than just paying some money and watching those numbers. You know, I'm just not that egotistical like I guess some of the other people out there. So, you know, I really need your honest, genuine support. Tell your friends, tell everybody. And make sure that you follow us here and like us on our Instagram page. So again, I'm trying to keep these to about 30 minutes, you know, give or take. Sometimes I'll go a little bit over. If you miss some of it or if you can't hang out for the whole thing, of course, they're all going to be in our feed. You can always catch up later and watch the remaining seminar if I happen to lose you. Or, you know, like I said, some of them are really going to be extensive, especially as we get deeper into April. A lot of different things are going to be happening. We're approaching opening season for grouper, and even though we're going to talk a little bit about grouper tonight, obviously the season opens in May, so we're really going to have an extensive seminar on grouper fishing toward the end of April, and that one definitely is going to be lengthy, okay? So let's get right into it here on the fishing report side of things. You know, up off of Isle Morada, the wreck fishing up there remains pretty consistent, you know. Every time you go out and fish those wrecks, you've got an opportunity at some nice mutton snappers. Seems to be a little bit more consistent up there than even here off of Marathon. King mackerel, the blackfin tunas up on the reef up there. It's a good fishery. It's solid. You know, remember though, fresh bait is key. A variety of bait, may it be dropping down a big live pilchard, a fresh ballyhoo plug or a live ballyhoo. You know, of course, pinfish is a staple, but the wreck fishing up there off Isle Morada is hot. Always has been, and it probably always will be. Let's hope so, at least. Sword fishing up there, you know, you've got some legends that are fishing up there out of Bud and Mary's and that whole area. And the sword fishing's good. You know, you're not going to catch them every day, but very likely you may get bites every day. It's rare that they'll put in all of that time and effort and not even get a bite. So you may have a few shots, you know, every day. Used to be a time with daytime sword fishing where guys were going out there and dropping one bait to the bottom, you know, on an electric reel like an LP or something like that. But today that game is changing, it's evolving, and some of these crews are going out there, they're fishing 2 rods, 3 rods, and even 4 lines, okay? Deep dropping for daytime swordfish in, you know, 14 to 1,800 feet of water with up to 4 lines. You know, of course, you've got to have a dialed in crew and you've got to have the right tackle. It's a big, you know, undertaking, but it's possible. And at the bare minimum, the guys are fishing 2 rods. You're going to fish 1 rod, what we call a tip rod, and then you're going to fish a buoy rod, okay? So your chances of hooking a swordfish as the years progress and this daytime fishery evolves, hooking fish or getting bites, of course, is increasing because you're increasing the number of baits that you're presenting. So it obviously all makes sense. Fish 1 bait, you're going to be limited on bites. Fish 2, 3, 4, obviously you're increasing your rods. And you may catch some exotic species mixed in there, some big sharks off the bottom, mako, threshers, not unheard of to catch a blue marlin on a deep swordfish bait. So a lot of different stuff down there. Giant tunas have been caught on, you know, daytime swordfish baits. So super exciting fishery, something you should definitely put on your bucket list if you've never done it before. You know, working our way west here, Marathon, I gotta tell you, I was out on the reef all day today. Got some family or some friends in, little kids, took them out patchery fishing. Very, very slow. Water was crystal clear, okay, but very little current, almost no current at all. And that's the key when you're patchery fishing. You've got to have that current. You've got to have moving water. Otherwise, you've got all these fish right behind the boat, and I'm watching them today. I'm looking right down at all of these nice, you know, keeper-sized yellowtails, trying to get these kids hooked up, and the fish just wouldn't bite. They wouldn't cooperate. The water was crystal clear. There was no current. And yeah, I know, you can, you know, go down, you know, from 20-pound fluoro to 15-pound fluoro to 12-pound fluoro, and really go maybe even from a jig head down to a small circle hook. I know, I've tried it all, and I'm telling you, they wouldn't touch anything. You know, we've caught a handful of fish, but overall it was very, very slow. We did catch a mix of juvenile groupers, and there has been a lot of juvenile grouper all up and down the patch reefs. I mean, I'm going to tell you, the last few times I was out, you can't fish those patches without releasing groupers. So hopefully, you know, some of those bigger fish, of course, will still be cooperating come May 1st. And a lot of speedos, more than I've seen in the last 4 or 5 months. I mean, you put that chum bag in, you start chumming, and within minutes, there are just hundreds of speedos behind the boat. And that is one of the absolute best baits that you could possibly use for a wide variety of species. You can throw a cast net on the speedos or just 4, 6, or 8-pound test leader, very, very thin, small gold hook, small little piece of bait, use a little float, just throw it back there and you'll be able to pick off those speedos one at a time. But a great bait, and if you see them in your slick, if they're eating a chum, you should do whatever you can to catch those, even if you stockpile them and freeze them, because again, they're absolutely awesome baits. Nevertheless, patch reef fishing was slow today. We did end up with some lane snappers, a handful of keeper yellowtails. Like I said, we released a bunch of groupers that were, you know, all undersized today, no big ones, although we did have some keepers earlier in the week fishing, you know, some other patches. Ended up fishing a spot in about 70 foot that actually produced better than anything shallower. So today it seemed like the bite was a little bit deeper. But every day is different on those patches. It really is. There's a lot of fish there. The yellowtails, the mangroves, you could always get a nice mutton or two. So much opportunity on those patch reefs that they're, of course, always worth fishing, but you got to be prepared to switch it up. You've got to have a variety of tackle, lighter leaders if need be. Look for the king mackerel as well. Be ready for them. Today we had some kings come through. Okay, so that's the key with that patch reef fishing, is really to be ready. And even though today was slow, there's other days this week that were on fire. Okay, so that's always relatively reliable. That's for sure. Here again in the Marathon area, the tarpon, that's the big news. You know, a lot of guys are on these tarpon. And of course, they're at the bridges. The tarpon fishing is heating up. Not uncommon to hook 5 fish in a day. And I'm not talking about Bahia Honda, you know, feeding out a crab like all these guides and flat skips. Even the charter boats, the bigger center consoles, you know, they're fishing a 7-mile bridge. And they're getting shots, you know, and super exciting to catch these silver kings. If you've never caught a big tarpon, I'll tell you what, from now and especially May, peak season, you've got to come down to the Keys and do this because it is something you'll never forget. They're an absolutely awesome fish. One thing I do want to mention, though, that's real important, of course, everybody, for the most part, associates tarpon fishing with bridges down here in the Keys, unless, of course, you're on the flats fishing with a guide. But even the bigger boats, you can fish these bridges. But the bait's real important. Now, there's really relatively 2 baits that we're fishing down here, Marathon and in the Keys in general for the tarpon, and it's either going to be a crab or a mullet. Okay, a crab or a mullet. Mullet, by the way, let me tell you something. The canals here in Marathon are absolutely stacked with mullet. Stacked. I'm talking if you throw a net, you won't even be able to lift the net out of the water. There's so many of them. Big ones, too. Nice tarpon mullet. So plenty of mullet around. And if you think about it, you know, with all of the mullet around here in Marathon, it's obvious that where it kind of makes sense that the tarpon around these bridges here locally are keyed in on those mullet. That's going to be the hot bait. You get down there to Bahia Honda, and those tarpon are looking for crabs. They're looking for crabs drifting through, you know, more so than the mullet. So certain bridges, a certain bait is going to be better, and it's always a good idea to have both the crabs and the mullet, or just do a little bit of research and see which of the two is really going to keep you hooked up in that particular area. On the wrecks offshore here, same thing, hit or miss. You know, some muttons around, not very consistent. Occasionally another African pompano, but that's coming to an end. The permit are still on the wrecks offshore. We talked about that last week. Really, really cool. Great opportunity to catch permit. So the permit are on the wrecks. If you want action, if that's all you're looking for, just jig. Slow pitch jig or vertical jig on the wrecks between 150 and 250 feet of water, and you'll stay tight all day long with amberjacks, almaco jacks. There's bonitas around. Wide variety of species on the jigs, okay? So that's something that, you know, is pretty reliable, that's for sure. On the shallow side of things, bonefish, you know, on the flats and stuff, of course, they're always there. I'm not big on that at all. I'm not the right guy to talk to about that or to listen to about that, even though I've done it a bunch of times. Nevertheless, working our way west, Key West, something real interesting is going on down there. You know, Western Dry Rocks, it's an area about 10 miles from Key West that is a spawning ground for permit and for mutton snapper. And they just closed that fishery, an area about a 1 square mile area. It doesn't seem like it's that big of an area, but it is. And they closed the fishery completely. You just cannot fish in that area for 4 months. Okay, now the reason they did that, understand, you can't keep a permit anyway during that period. The season's closed. But the sharks, okay, from, you know, minimum 1 of 3 hooked fish are getting eaten by sharks, at least a third. So, you know, we don't want you there hooking these permit, which 1 out of 3 are going to get eaten by a shark, and there goes those fish, right? It just doesn't make sense. So they've closed off fishing Western Dry Rocks as of today, April 1st, for 4 months. So keep that in mind, okay? My good buddy, Captain Greg, Yankee Captains, who sails out of Key West year-round. He's been doing a lot of trips lately. His most recent dry Tortugas trip was slow, very, very slow. Didn't have good conditions, just wasn't a good trip. But came back, turned around, you know, loaded the boat, went way out there to, I think he's fishing Pulley Ridge, doing a deep drop trip way out in the Gulf of Mexico, and crushing them. Absolutely crushed him. You know, he communicates with me on a satellite phone, and the deep dropping way out in the Gulf of Mexico is just absolutely awesome. So if you've never done a long-range trip, check out Yankee Captains, okay? You absolutely won't regret it, but I have to stress, make sure you watch all of the videos and make sure you're prepared or you'll be real disappointed. So let's get into the good stuff here. Let's get into our topic of conversation tonight, which is deep diving plugs, okay? Deep diving plugs. Now, I've talked to a lot of guys. I get a lot of comments, and I get 2 different things here. I get, man, I love deep diving plugs. They're incredibly effective. I catch a ton of fish on them, especially wahoo and this and that, blah, blah, blah. It's awesome. And then there's a whole other crowd that seems like goes, I never catch anything on deep diving plugs. Maybe I'm not doing it right, you know, whatever it may be. I'm not catching anything on deep diving plugs. What am I doing? So, I really wanted to talk more about these lures, how I'm using them, okay, and where I find them to be the most effective. And again, understand, listen, I'm not telling you my way is the only way. I'm not telling you my way is the best way. I'm telling you my way is my way, okay? And from a lot of trial and error and a lot of time spent on the water, a lot of research, and access to a lot of different lures, I've learned a lot, good and bad. And sometimes, it's not a bad idea, or I should say, sometimes it's not so bad. You go out there and you don't catch anything. Okay, and whatever you were trying didn't work. You know what? You've got to learn from it. You've got to say, hey, man, it didn't work, but what did I learn? Why didn't it work? Sometimes it's just as important to know what didn't work than what did work. Just kind of remember that. That just make every trip a learning experience. Super important. But getting back to the deep diving plugs here, okay, understand that there's endless venues that you can use deep diving plugs for, including on the inshore side, okay? But again, once again, I'm gonna remind you, I'm, really an offshore kind of guy. There's guides, flats guides, inshore guides that probably do a much better job of talking to you about where, when, why, how to use a big lipped plug on the inshore side of things. Offshore, though, that's where I spend most of my time on my 39 CV. Obviously, I'm not on the flats, okay? I'm offshore, and that's where I really utilize these baits a lot. I like to troll. I really, really do. And I like to catch fish on artificial lures. To me, it's just incredibly rewarding. I'd rather catch, one fish on a fake bait than, 5 on a natural bait. So it's something that I really have spent a lot of time, again, I don't want to say perfecting, but doing it, okay? So on the offshore side of things, when we think deep diving plug, of course, the epitome of a deep diving plug, we think of a hard plastic bait, a hard plastic stick bait or lure with a big lip, okay, big lip. And of course, what this does, the fundamentals of this are obviously you're rigging to this lip, and as you're dragging this through the water, that lip digs in and it drives that lure deeper into the water column. Well, let's talk about why we would want to fish lures deeper in the water column. Obviously, while we're trolling, we're creating more of a three-dimensional spread. We've got lures up on the surface, and now we can fish baits below the surface as well. Depending on the lure, that might be anywhere from 10 to 30 feet below the surface, some even more, okay? So now we can enhance our overall trolling spread and also fish more lines, because that deep bait may be 1 or 2, and generally when I'm offshore trolling for dolphin, blackfin tuna, okay, or trolling even for sailfish, I'll have 1, 2 deep diving plugs at the very most, okay, and often just 1. But it does give me that extra element of digging into the water column, having a bait deeper in the water column, and of course, it also acts as a teaser, okay? It really does. So a lot of benefits there for fishing deeper in the water column. And, of course, fish like wahoo, we know notoriously like to hit baits that are deeper. It's not very often that a wahoo is going to eat a skirted lure that's skipping across the top intended for dolphin. Obviously, that's a dolphin lure. It reacts, acts, swims, tracks differently than something that we would use to target wahoo, okay? Let's talk about wahoo for a second and how to use deep diving plugs. Obviously, we're going to step it up. Now, what I just showed you here was a Rapala X-Wrap. This is a staple. It's an X-Wrap. It's a great deep diving plug. It's affordable. It's versatile. They come in a million different, patterns. This one's, mimics a small juvenile tuna or bonita or something. It's a great color, a great pattern right there. If I only had one, that would probably be it right there. I like dark lures, but I also like the bright lures. They both seem to work. Nevertheless, it's a great lure. If you can't get your hands on anything else, I highly recommend these Rapala X-Wraps. However, when it comes to targeting larger pelagic species, especially the wahoo, you need to step it up a little bit. And really, the latest, I don't want to say the latest player in the game, but the hot ticket nowadays, of course, are these Nomads, okay? These Nomad deep diving plugs. These are called Nomad Dtx Minnows. They come in a wide variety of sizes, okay? And again, they're not one of my advertisers. I'm not plugging them for any other reason other than it's a kick-ass lure. It's a kick-ass brand, and they make lures that can withstand the rigors of hardcore saltwater fishing, and they catch fish. More importantly than anything else, they catch fish. Okay, these things are money, but it costs a lot of money too. So make sure that you're rigged properly there. But nevertheless, it's a super bait. It's a Nomad Dtx Minnow. It's got wire through construction. It's practically indestructible, which of course is incredibly important. Big, super sharp, super strong hooks. But most importantly, I'd like to point something out to you. Look at those two, compare those two lip sizes right there. You know, hopefully you can see that. The Nomad has at least three times the, you know, the surface area on that giant lip. Well, what does that mean? That means that that bait's going to track deeper in the water column, first and foremost. Number two, look at the size of the body. Look at that body and look at that body right there, okay? I mean, it, again, is 3, if not 4 times the size. It's a massive bait. This is the 200 size, and I also fish the 220, which is even bigger, okay? A little bit bigger than the 200 size right there, okay? Look at that lip. Again, it's ginormous. So this bait's gonna swim really deep in the water column. But more importantly, not only does it swim deep, it tracks straight, okay? Just like that, okay? Tracks straight, very straight, just like that, at super high speed, okay? Now, trolling lures, historically, deep diving plugs, you really couldn't pull them at, you know, 12 to 16 knots. Absolutely, 12 to 16 knots, even faster. You can pull these baits to 20 knots. You really can. If they're rigged properly, 20 knots, no additional weight. So that really makes high-speed wahoo fishing, it changes the game because now I can take a different approach. And instead of using weighted skirted lures, you know, and that trolling lead, which works great, make no mistake, and I love doing that, I'm not going to stop that. But you could also now have an alternative, and that's to troll these large deep diving plugs. You control 2 of them, you control 4 of them, 2 closer to the boat and 2 further behind. Understand if you're gonna do that, and there's a lot of guys doing that now, they're pulling 4 of these Nomad deep diving plugs, okay? These minnows, the DTX Minnows, for high-speed wahoo fishing, and they're fishing that 12 to 16 knots, a little bit slower than the 14 to 18 knots, so they're saving a little bit of fuel, still covering a lot of ground, and really, really effective, okay? But remember, if you're gonna do that, fish the bigger baits, the 200s, the 220s, closer to the boat, a little bit deeper and closer to the boat, and then maybe a couple of slightly smaller ones further behind and up on top. So as an example, if I'm gonna fish a 4-rod spread with these deep diving plugs for wahoo, I'm gonna fish 2 of the DTX Minnow 220 size closer to the boat, and I'm gonna fish 2 of the 200 size further away and higher up in the water column. Now the rod that I'm going to be using, because again, remember, you're putting a tremendous amount of strain on these outfits when you're pulling a lure with a lip that big. Look at that, right there. Okay, you're pulling a lure with a lip that big, okay, at 12 to 15 knots. You're creating a tremendous amount of strain. This is no place for sissy tackle. Put your kite fishing gear away. Put all that, you know, 10, 20, 30-pound tackle away. You've got to step it up. Either bent butt rods, straight butt rods. I fish these Chaos Rodzillas. They're rated for 60 to 130-pound line. It's matched to a size, either a 30 wide or a 50, 2-speed reel. 2 speeds really, really important in this fishery. 65-pound diamond braid. You could probably get away with 50, but certainly nothing less than that. So 65-pound diamond braid. Okay? Bent butt rods, like I said, or straight butt rods. That's what I'm fishing when I'm high-speed trolling these lures for wahoo. But I want to point out to you how I have them rigged, because this I find to be really, really important and something you should really consider if you're not already doing it. Historically, or I should say, you know, we all know when you're fishing for wahoo with those toothy critters, you've got to fish wire, right? You've got to fish cable. But I'm telling you, I rig all of my wahoo lures now on heavy, you know, Momoy high catch leader. It's extra hard leader material, 220 or 250-pound test. I don't fish wire, I don't fish cable, okay? And it's a short leader. Look at that. Right there in my hand is a 250-pound ball-bearing barrel swivel. Of course, it's crimped on because I'm not tying a knot, So it's crimped right there, a nice, good, reliable crimp. I've got about 30 inches of leader material, and then it's crimped right to the front of that lure. You can see right to that ring right there, okay? It's a very clean connection, very clean. And I'm going to tell you, if you contact the manufacturer, he'll tell you that that is the way to rig these baits in order to get them to swim the absolute deepest that they will. And that's what we want for the wahoo. We want a bait that penetrates that water column, that tracks true and straight at high speed. Now, I haven't lost the fish yet, but I promise you, you're going to catch fish, you're going to bring this up, and your leader is going to be chafed. It's going to be chafed up, but it's heavy and it's reliable. It's 220, 250, depending on the size of the lure, okay? And it's a big bait. It's a very big bait. So if it was a small bait, obviously the wahoo would inhale it, and that would be the end of that. But that's not what we're talking about here. It's a big, big bait. So you don't tend to lose the fish, but be prepared to re-rig. When you're chafed, if it's nicked, whatever the case is, re-rig that lure before you put it out or before you fish it. Really important. So again, wahoo fishing, heavy-duty tackle. You can fish up to 4 deep diving plugs. You know, this isn't a wahoo fishing seminar, so I'm not going to tell you that, of course, 150 to 300, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about one of the many venues where you can fish these deep diving plugs. Now, let's move on to another one. Out here off the Keys, Islamorada, Marathon, you've got some world famous humps, right? The Islamorada hump, the Marathon hump, 409, West hump. And of course, way out there, you've got a lot of dolphin. Guys are dolphin fishing out there. And you've got a unlimited amount of blackfin tunas, okay? That's the ticket out there. Guys are running out there, live chumming, catching blackfin tunas. I'm going to tell you that you can go out there, okay, and not bring any live bait at all. If you can't get your hands on live bait, I don't want you to think that you can't go out there and fish these humps. Go out there with some 20 or 30 pound class trolling gear. This is obviously substantially lighter than what I just showed you. Again, it's just a Chaos, in this case, it's a Chaos stand-up trolling rod rated for 30 to 50 pound line. 30 pound diamond line, high vis, of course. This is my trolling outfit, part of my trolling arsenal, so I can see that line behind the boat. And lo and behold, I've got a deep diving plug right there, hooked right to it. And guess what kind that is? That's a Nomad. That's a Dtx Minnow. It's just a lot smaller. It's 140 is the size on this one. And it'll swim down to 20 feet. Again, a really impressive big lip on that small bait. But I mean, let's be honest with each other. What does that look like to you? To me, that looks like a big fat pilchard, right? I mean, if that's not a big fat pilchard, I don't know what is. Everybody's out there at the humps, live chumming, throwing pilchards. There's pilchards everywhere, swimming in the water column, getting crushed and skied on by blackfin tunas. You come through there, don't go right through the fleet. Have a little respect there, but go around the outer perimeter and troll a couple of these babies, and I'm telling you what, you're hooked up. I guarantee it. And there aren't very many guarantees in fishing. Okay, so make sure if you're out there trolling the humps, troll some deep diving plugs specifically for those blackfin tuna. All of this started years ago when a lot of the guides and charter boat captains out there were taking bass lures, crankbaits, okay, bass lures, and they were pulling them and catching the blackfin tuna. But the hardware on the bass lures, of course, cannot withstand the pressure, you know, from a 10, 20, 30 pound blackfin tuna. They'll destroy them all day long. This can. That's what this was made for. This is a hardcore saltwater lure, okay, made for powerful game fish. Look at the way that I have it rigged. About 30 inches a leader, okay? Same crimped connection right there. Obviously much lighter leader. In this case, I'm at 150. Now, not 250, okay? I scale it way down. I'm at 150. I've got 150 pound class barrel swivel right there. Crimped connection, nice and clean. Another crimped connection right to the lip of the lure. It's balanced. Everything is a balanced system, okay? And remember that. Obviously, I don't need a 300 pound swivel if I'm fishing 100 pound or 150 pound leader. It just doesn't make sense. So when you're out there blackfin tuna fishing, again, I cannot stress enough how important it is to, at the very least, one, if not two, deep diving plugs in your spread, okay? Now, another area, or I should say another venue where I fish deep diving plugs that perhaps is my absolute favorite, maybe next to wahoo fishing, okay, is for groupers. You know, down here in the Florida Keys, there's a tremendous grouper fishery on the patches. Okay, tremendous grouper fishery on the patches. And real quick here, I just saw a real important question, and it said, are you putting a snap swivel on the leader to the barrel swivel? And the answer is no, and I'll tell you why. First of all, the less hardware that I have, the better. That's number one. And the more streamlined all of my connections are, the deeper that plug is going to swim in the water column. That's reason number two. Okay, so I don't need it. I tie my main running line right to the barrel swivel. That's right on the leader, or I should say that's right on the lure, right there. Okay, that's where I'm tying my main running line to, right to that little barrel swivel. Now, if I want to switch lures, no problem. Just snip, I grab another lure and I tie that one on. These are rigged. They're in my tackle bag. I've got them rigged. Here's one. Here's another one, already rigged. Okay, I'm not going to rig it out there, worry about crimping it. They're already rigged and ready to go. Preparation pays. So if I happen to get chafed up, or if I want to switch colors or sizes, which I do often, I experiment a lot, it's very easy. Just cut that main running line and tie right to that barrel swivel. You've got less connections, less hardware, less chance to catch grass, which is another benefit to it. So it's just an all-around better system and more streamlined for me. Getting back to the grouper fishery, okay? Super phenomenal grouper fishery in shallow water across the Keys. There's red groupers, there's gag groupers, there's black groupers. I find that the blacks are the most aggressive and also the most prized. There's just something really special about saying, oh, look at this black grouper that I caught, right? I mean, everybody loves the gags too. They just seem to be more popular. The red groupers seem to be more abundant as well, and of course are prized, but there's something special about hoisting up a big black grouper. And those black groupers, they love smacking big trolling lures on the patch reefs, okay, as you're trolling on the patch reefs. Now here's how I do this. I go right out of my cut, I get out there into 26 to 30 feet of water. And I know that seems like a really narrow little window, but that's what I have found to be the most effective. Why? Because I pull these DTX Minnows. Okay, here's actually a grouper outfit rigged and ready to go. All right, I know May 1st is a little ways away, but nevertheless wanted to show it to you. Okay. The rod is a little bit beefier, 30 to 60 pound. It's on a Daiwa. This is one of Daiwa's new Saltiga 2-speed LV60s. I'll tell you what, this thing is a machine. It's an absolute machine. I absolutely love this reel. I love the big crank on it. 2-speed reel. So really a nice reel if you're looking for a heavy-duty conventional reel that's real versatile, 2-speed, but that's nowhere near as big and bulky as an international or something, of that caliber. Nevertheless, there it is right there. It's another one. It's a 220 Nomad, rigged exactly the same way. No different than how I would rig it for wahoo. No different. It's a wahoo lure, okay? But it also is a grouper lure. So it's a big bait right there, big bait. And you may say to yourself, well, man, that seems like a really big bait. It is a big bait, intentionally and for, multiple reasons. First and foremost, I'm going to compare this to this, okay? The staple in deep diving plugs. Again, compare those lips. Clearly, this is going to penetrate the water much deeper than this is going to. Will this work? Absolutely. I'm not mocking this bait. You're going to catch fish on this bait, but you're going to catch, I have found that you're going to catch more on a much larger profile bait. First of all, you're going to get closer to the bottom. I found at 4 knots, and that's my sweet spot for trolling these groupers, 4 to 5 knots, this bait's going to get down 25 feet. 25 feet, that bait's going to get into the water column, okay? So 25 feet, it's going to track straight. It's right off the bottom. It's right off the bottom, and that's why I'm saying 26 to 30 feet. I want it very close to the bottom, within, eyesight, of course, of that big black grouper that's hanging under a ledge. I want him to see that bait. I want him to see that bait coming by, wiggling like crazy right in front of his face, and he's going to dart out from under that ledge and just smack it. And don't think for 1 second that that hook is too big, because I'm telling you what, a 5-pound grouper will absolutely inhale that bait. Plus, look at the reward for the commitment. Remember, you're asking or trying to persuade a big grouper to leave his lair, his ledge, his home. You're trying to say, hey, get out of there and come eat me, okay? But he's got to make a split-second decision, and he's got to say, well, wait a second, the reward for doing that is going to be either this or this, okay? He's going to come after this. They want something big that they can eat. So I'll go out there, 4 or 5 knots, no faster than that. I'm going to fish 2 plugs of 2 completely different colors, okay? Either the 200s or the 220s. I find them both to be equally as effective. I might fish those 2, okay? Just to have that contrast of saying, well, one of them is a brighter, one of them is a lighter color. There's no bait fish that looks like that. Is there a bait fish that looks like that swims by you? Because I can tell you I haven't seen a fish in the Florida Keys that looks like that. And there's some pretty damn pretty fish in the Florida Keys, but none look like that. Okay, it's not about the color, it's about the shading, it's about the perspective that the fish sees, it's about the contrast. That's really what it is. So I want a really kind of bright contrast, and I want a darker contrast. You know, there's all of these different sciences where, well, on a bright day, sun is shining, bait fish are going to be much brighter, so you want a bright lure that really is reflecting a lot of light. On a dark, overcast day, while you would think you would want a bright color lure that fish could find, on the contrary, a nice dark bait looks much more natural because you don't have a lot of light out there. It's cloudy, it's overcast, it's raining, whatever it may be. So that's the kind of logic behind the bright and the dark. But I do like to fish them both. If you're trolling for groupers with a couple buddies and you get 2 or 3 bites on this and no bites on this, it might be a good idea to switch this over to this also, or something similar. And I know I'm not being presumptuous that you have 50 trolling plugs laying around in every color, size, and pattern, but listen, we're fishermen, right? We can't help buying stuff. We can't help stockpiling stuff. We can't help going out there with a boatload of gear that we may or may not need. That's what you do, and that's what I do, and that's what we have in common, right? Along with other things. So in turn, the more gear that you have, the better. But don't go too shallow, because you don't want to get this hung in the bottom. Okay, you don't want to get it hung in the bottom, because if you do, that big hook could potentially bury into the bottom, and you're not getting that back. And there goes 50 or 60 bucks, whatever it is. So I find that 26 to 30 foot is really the sweet spot. I'll just slowly zigzag down the whole, for miles on the reef, down those ledges, okay? And that's what I'm looking for, is the sharper ledges, the overhangs. That's where those big black groupers tend to hang out. They come out, they smack the rod, they smack the bait, line comes singing off the reel, the boat's continuing to move forward. Don't immediately pull back into neutral. You don't want to do that. Okay, you want to keep that momentum moving forward a little bit, keep that fish from getting you back down, into the rocks, okay? I don't fish any other lures when I'm trolling for grouper. Why? I don't want to deal with barracudas. I don't want to deal with any other junk. I'm focused on trolling groupers. And it's a really cool way to catch grouper. I mean, of course, dropping down a live bait, is awesome. Jigging grouper is absolutely awesome. But just trolling deep diving plugs, to me, there's just something really special about that fishery. And I have found that 9 out of 10 times, if not 98 out of 100 times, you get a crushing bite, it's a grouper. It's a grouper. Yellowtails or any other sort of snapper on the reef, they're not eating a bait that's this big. They're not doing it, okay? There's only one thing that's going to eat that up, and that's a big Mama Jama black grouper. So there's obviously a lot of other ways to incorporate trolling lures. One other quick way that I'm going to tell you that I think is really beneficial, a medium-sized bait, maybe something in the, 150 size, 165, something like this. You're approaching an area, may it be a wreck, may it be reef that you want to fish. Okay, you're getting there, you're a half a mile away, stop the boat, put out a plug, even if you only have one, put it out. Okay, get it out there and now slowly troll over to your area. If you're looking around that area, searching, if you're crisscrossing that wreck, looking for exactly how it's lying or, you know, what you see around it, any life, that's okay. Just throw that, you know, deep diving plug back there, lock it up, make sure your drag set properly, leave the clicker on, leave it in the rod holder and forget about it. Okay, and I'm telling you what, you're going to be surprised. You're going to be really surprised at how often that deep diving plug gets crushed before you even get set up. Okay, so you're looking around anyway, or you're spending that time anyway. Maximize it by putting that bait out there. It's only one line. Don't even worry about putting a second one out there. It's almost just like a scout bait. You're not even counting on it producing anything. So when it does, it's just nothing but a bonus, okay? So again, a lot of different ways to fish. If you're doing things that are working for you, stick with them, you know, by all means. And don't be afraid to share that information with me as well, okay? Because I want to be a better angler. I want to be a more successful angler, okay? With that being said, you know, we're way past our limit here already, almost at 40 minutes. I'm really looking forward to next week. I've got a really cool topic lined up for next week. I want to thank everybody again for tuning in here. Great crowd once again. I'm super excited about it. You know, we're really building up momentum here, and I want to remind you, if you missed any part of it, you can catch it, you know, in our feed. And, you know, it's hard for me, I got to be honest, it's hard to remember everything in a short period of time and to jam a lifetime of fishing experience at you in 30 minutes, you know, you just can't do it. So I do the best that I can as an overview here, but if there's something that I missed, if there's something that you want more information on, by all means, you know, message me, email me at Mike@FloridaSportFishing. Don't forget to tell your friends, family, your mother, father, whoever. I want everybody following us, okay, at Florida Sport Fishing TV. I want you to check out our YouTube page as well. And don't forget, stay tuned. July, the new season, season 11. I can't even believe we've already been filming for 11 years. Season 11 of Florida Sport Fishing TV is going to debut in July, and it's going to be the absolute best season ever.